September 28th, 2021 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee will now come to order. The clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Barnhart.
Here.
Mr. Baroff.
Here.
Mr. Brew.
Here.
Chairman Delahany is excused. Mrs. DeFlorio.
Here.
Mr. Felder.
Here.
Mr. Heber.
Here.
Mr. Mafucci.
Here.
Mr. Marinetti.
Here.
Mr. Morelli.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
President Carbone.
Here.
Would everyone please stand and, with Legislator Barnhart lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Sorry for the surprise.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any speakers signed up for the public forum? There is not. Is there anyone present who has not signed up for the public forum that would like to speak to the committee at this time? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the minutes from the August 24th, 2021 meeting before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business. Mr. Clerk?
Referral 21-0327, authorization of intermunicipal agreement with the Spencer Fork Fire District for the purchase of a Lucas automated chest compression device.
Sure. Second.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion? Legislator Mafucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, or the maker of the motion, have there been any conversations with the administration about this issue?
Legislator Colby, did you?
No, we have not had any discussion with them. This is use of money has been used in other counties in New York State for the same purpose. Purchase this equipment, both the Erie County and Eden County, so I thought it was appropriate to use the same source of money that's been used in other counties to improve use.
You have the floor, Mr. Mafucci. Fire away.
Okay, through the chair, I did happen to attend an ambulance event out in my area, and Stryker makes this kind of equipment as well. So was there any kind of comparative study done to ensure that this Lucas automated chest compression device is the best and most efficient use of the funding?
I believe this is made by Stryker.
So Lucas is a Stryker company?
Is the name of the product, I believe, not.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions, legislator?
I don't have any at this time, no.
Are there any other questions? Legislator Baroff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, do we know if this is clearly CARES funding eligible?
Mr. Vice Chair, so with all due respect to the decision-making in Erie County, I am not convinced this is appropriate under the CARES Act. I have read the referral. I read that this is part of COVID-19 infection mitigation recommendations. I'm not sure what recommendations they are referring to. If it's social distancing, I do know that this is a type of device that an individual first responder would have to wrap around or attach to the patient they are serving. So that does involve personal contact. So I have a little bit of concern, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Then as a follow-up to that question, and this is something through the chair to the administration is likely to be part of an audit at some future date, correct?
Sorry, Legislator Roth, I couldn't
No,
understand your language.
This purchase, like any other purchase, will be likely to be the subject of an audit at some future date. Is that correct? Through the chair?
Mr. Vice Chair, we were advised by U.S. Treasury that they do reserve the right to audit our expenditures and claiming.
Okay. So for me personally, just as an aside, that's a concern. I have an additional question. The referral authorizes an IMA. Do we know, and this is for the chair of the administration, would any services be provided to the county pursuant to that IMA, or is that not beneficial to the county at all? Do we know?
I'm sorry, Legislator. Do me a favor,
I'm gonna take-
louder and slower.
Okay, here we go.
I apologize. I think my hearing aids aren't working as well tonight as they usually do.
I had a mask on, and that probably would muffles me as well. So through the chair to the administration, the referral authorizes an IMA. Would any services be provided to the county pursuant to that IMA?
They would not, Mr. Vice Chairman. I would add that Spencerport Fire District did have an IMA with Monroe County back in 2020. They did submit expenses related to COVID-19 response and mitigation that we did reimburse. At least at that time, this was not contemplated.
Thank you. So just to reiterate, so through the chair of the administration, the Spencerport Fire District did in fact request funding before, and this was not part of that, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
Legislator Morelli, I believe you had a question, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, I appreciate it. Through you to the maker of the motion, I see that the amount that you're looking for to go out ahead of the election is $19,500. Was there some way in which you came up with that number, or was that just something you woke up one morning and decided to write down?
To the chairman, review, have both numbers. I think it is a very poor remark on your part. The numbers came because we got costs from Lucas for both the equipment and the supplies for the equipment to run that they suggested, plus it was included a battery pack charging system. So all these costs are detailed, were turned in, and so it's not a number that's made up, it's actual cost figures that they have. And to answer the other question earlier about the fire department already receiving some funds through this source, through the county, that is correct. This Lucas device was not, they were not aware of it at the time they were putting the money up, or were putting in requests for funds. They were informed of it during one of their trainings. I believe it was a training that was held by the county fire commission or council. And as far as the Lucas device being approved for protection for COVID type virus transport, it was recommended, this is one of the recommended devices to be used by the American Health Association, recommends the device, mechanical CPR device like the Lucas system to help provide an extra layer of safety from the COVID-19 for the employees and people in distress. I would also like to add, the Spencerport Fire Department has been called on for many more calls to, for this type of device, it's not, or service, it's not the typical area. They are backing up the ambulances, and as you well know, many of you, that the ambulances are not getting released from the hospitals because the hospitals are backing up patients in the ambulances, not releasing the ambulances. And so the fire department has been asked to help cover it because of the lack of the ambulances. And I'm very proud to support the Spencerport fire department. It's one of the few fire departments in the region that has a waiting list for people to join its volunteer program. So anything I can do to encourage a very active fire department that serves the community very well, I'm not embarrassed to support it at all.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, was there excuse me, Mr. Vice Chairman, was there an RFP that went out to verify these costs and ensure that when we were using taxpayer dollars, we were getting the best price based on what was being looked for here? And that's to the maker of the motion.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this is an RFP is not required because it's under 20,000. So one was not done.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, to the administration, is the legislator correct in saying that this doesn't need to go through an RFP process or through purchasing?
Grant to the fire department, it's not a purchase.
That's not probably the questions to the administration, please. While they're discussing, I think we can all agree to disagree, but we don't need to be disagreeable in the way we ask questions, so I ask all of you to think about that as you ask questions in the future hearing. Administration, I'm sorry, we can be ready.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I mean, technically, this would not be a request for proposal. Those are usually drafted seeking professional services. This is probably fall under the public bid category. I don't know if Spencerport Fire District went through a bid process or not. I just don't have that information.
Okay, so
So,
thank you. So,
excuse me, 1 second, legislator, just a quick follow-up question. If you were buying this yourself as an administration, do you have to issue some sort of a bid for an item under $20,000? Just want to get clarification. Thank you, Legislator Morelli.
Through the chair, no, because it's under $20,000, it wouldn't be subject to public bid. The relevant entity, in this case, the Spencerport Fire District, would still need to follow whatever their own internal procurement policy was.
Thank you. Legislator Morelli, I'm sorry to interrupt.
thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Through you to the maker of the motion, do you know if the Spencerport Fire District has a procurement process which to purchase this? Was it followed when this $19,500 was determined?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I do know they have a procurement process that they go through because when they purchase trucks or any other item, they do go through a process. I do not know what their, process is specifically in detail. And I'm assuming, as an assumption, and I will find out if they filed it, and I'm assuming this was filed because it was approved by their board.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, notice that the intermunicipal agreement would only be for 4 months, which would be September 1st of 2021 to the end of this year. So my question is, if after that time period does would the device then, is that they just get to keep the device, or are they going to return it to the county? How does that work? That was through Mr. Vice Chairman to the administration.
I'm sorry, Legislator, I think there may be confusion. Who are you asking that question to?
That would be to the administration.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman, might be a little longer answer than anybody wanted. Monroe County does not actually have a practice of purchasing equipment for other entities that would be viewed as a prohibited activity, extending the county's credit. I do realize that there are certain purchases that are legally allowable under the CARES Act. For example, we provided PPE, rapid test kits, etc. When we do purchase equipment, it's through other legal agreements, like our police radios that we purchase for police agencies. Monroe County retains ownership of that equipment. We lock out the police departments in terms of programming. Their radios, their MDTs cannot be utilized in a technological sense for any other purpose than data and radio communication. And when those devices are broken or it's time for a replacement, the county expects those other police departments to return the old radios and old MDTs. In this particular referral, Mr. Vice Chairman, I don't know if the county would expect this equipment to be returned. There's a lot of issues, Mr. Vice Chairman. Mr. Vice Chairman, I'm not even sure I'm going to claim this to the CARES Act. I appreciate that the American Health Association has, someone says that they recommend this, but it's really the United States Treasury I'm worried about when it comes to claiming reimbursement on the CARES Act. I generally sign those claims, and I look between myself and the county attorney to determine what is.
I'm sorry. I think the intention was to use the community contingency fund. Is that not correct? Well, it is CARES Act. Okay. My bad. I apologize.
Mr. Vice Chairman, could Mr. Franklin finish what it was that?
Yeah, I intended to. I thought I just left. You've interrupted when I'm wrong.
It's Mr. Vice Chairman, it's really complicated. As I said, we don't buy equipment for other agencies. That's an extension of the county's credit. If I realize there are legal mechanisms under American Rescue Plan and the CARES Act to do such purchasing. Frankly, Mr. Vice Chairman, I don't think I'm going to be seeking reimbursement from the CARES Act for this purchase. I don't believe it's a reimbursable expense.
So through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, to the administration, presumably this is going to pass, in which case, where would the money come out of, since if it's, or is it just that the Spencerport Fire Department would not get reimbursement? I'm trying to, let me clarify through Mr. Vice Chairman. I would like to get how exactly the county administration would handle this, given that it sounds like there was no conversation had and it's an improper use of county money, especially since the county administration, it's their opinion that it wouldn't qualify under CARES Act dollars. So how exactly would the county handle this situation, given again that we have the presumption that this is going to.
Point of order, I think that's been asked and answered several times. The same thing.
Sorry, I was asking for clarification.
Excuse me,
I was
yes.
asking for
I
clarification.
understand what you're asking for, Mr. Morelli. We have a point of order. I have to address that before you can continue. That's the Robert's rules. Let's follow them because that's what we say we're going to do. I'm going to agree with the point of order and say that has been asked and answered. I think.
Actually,
Actually,
Mr. Vice Chairman, it hasn't been asked for.
Excuse me, Mr. Morelli. Excuse me,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Mr. Vice
No,
Chairman,
Mr.
I
Morelli,
need
I am,
clarification from
you
the
do not have the
administration.
floor right now, Mr. Morelli. Let's not have an argument. Let's try to be civil.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
trying
let's try to be
actually,
civil.
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking.
You have a point of order.
and I'm-
We follow Robert's rules. I have upheld the point of order. You can challenge the point of order.
I'd like to make a motion to reject the decision of the chair.
Second.
We have a motion to overrule the ruling of the chair in a second. Roll call vote, Mr. Clerk.
Yes sustains the rule of the chair. Ms. Barnhart.
No.
Mr. Baroff.
No.
Mr. Brew.
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio,
Yes.
Mr. Feldman,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
Mr. Mafucci,
No.
Mr. Marinetti,
Yes.
Mr. Morelli,
No.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Delahaney is excused, President Carbone.
Yes.
7-4, ruling on the chair is sustained.
So legislator, you still have the floor, but please move on to different questions.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, to the administration, when this comes to your desk, how do you plan to move forward?
Point of order, I think that's the same question.
I have to sustain that point of order. I think it's just a slightly different wording of a question you've already asked, legislator.
Okay. Well, that's fine, Mr. Chairman. You and your Republican colleagues can continue to stop allowing Democrats to ask questions, which presumably you guys.
Legislator Morelli, you no longer
But
have the
that's
floor.
fine. That's
You no
fine.
longer have the floor.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. I'll
Because-
explain my vote. I'm
You may
going
not be given an opportunity to have other questions. Legislator DeFlorio.
Due to the, excuse me. Do you have some decorum in the chamber?
Certainly, Madam Legislator.
Excuse me, Legislator Morelli, Legislator DeFlorio has the floor. Let's let her talk, please. You don't get an opportunity to speak just because you feel like it. Legislator DeFlorio.
Due to questioning with regard to funding of this referral, I make a motion to table it at this time.
Second.
We have a tabling motion by Legislator DeFlorio. I believe it was you, Legislator Morelli, that seconded it.
Table this motion, yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Barnhart,
Yes.
Mr. Baroff,
Yes.
Mr. Brew,
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio,
Yes.
Mr. Feldman,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
Mr. Mafucci,
Yes.
Mr. Marinetti,
Yes.
Mr. Morelli,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Delahaney is excused, President Carbone.
Yes.
11-0, motion to table this referral passes.
Next item, please, Mr. Clerk.
Referral number 21-0328, authorize funding for position at the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Monroe County to expand the existing Cornell Cooperative Extension nutrition program and strengthen Cornell Cooperative Extension public health outreach.
Move it, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Brew. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. I realize this was asked at the different committee meeting, and I was not there, but so I want to have the administration's take on this. How does the county contemplate that they will fund this position, assuming it passes, in following years?
Mr. Vice Chairman, in all honesty, I have not yet contemplated how we are going to fund this in the following years.
So just as a quick follow-up, to the Vice Chair, to the administration. So it's conceivable that this position will not be funded in following years. Is that correct?
Mr. Vice Chairman, that is a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Legislator Mafucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is to the administration, through you, the administration. So this $65,000 is tax levy dollars, correct?
Mr. Vice Chairman, the intent of the referral is to use the Community Contingency Fund, which is county tax revenue.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Referral 21-0329, authorize the allocation of emergency grant funding to the Gates Volunteer Ambulance Service to reimburse expenditures incurred during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by President Carbone. Is there any discussion? Legislator Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair. It's tough. Through you.
I don't look like Sean at all.
Well, either way. Through you to the administration, do we know, and Commissioner doesn't know, perhaps to make the motion, do we have any documentation for the expenditure that actually incurred each year? For the $80,000 some dollars?
Who's that to make the motion?
You have to make the motion, yes, it's here, yes.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I must explain, I only have hearing in one ear, and I only caught partial of your comments, so thank you so much.
My apologies. Through the Vice Chair to the maker of the motion, do we have a copy or documentation for the $80-some thousand of reimbursement for the ambulance service?
Through the chair, through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, I do, I have a detailed copy of all expenditures.
Thank you. Through the Chair of the Administration, through the Chair to the maker of the motion, could you please share that documentation with the committee, if possible, or at the very least, the full legislature meeting?
You, Mr. Chairman, yes, I can share that to you. If you give me a day or two, I can get that out to you.
Okay, thank you. Through the Chair to the maker of the motion, do we know if the when the payments, when these expenses occur?
Okay, yes, through the chair, could you repeat again? I have difficulty hearing you.
The question was, do you know when these expenses occurred?
Through the chair, yes, they did. They occurred at different times from February of 2020 to, I think it was just a couple months ago, 2021. And I want to add why these expenses occurred. If I live in the town of Gates, if I need an ambulance, I call, they pick me up, they take me to the hospital. 2 weeks later, I will receive a bill. I pay that bill through my carrier, healthcare. The town of Gates provides, Gates Ambulance provides service not only to the town of Gates residents, but to the city of Rochester, to the town of Ogden, village of Spencerport, the northeast portion of Parma Hilton. Individuals within that geographical boundary, many of them do not have health care coverage. So the Gates Ambulance, when they go on a call, they eat that money that goes to that ambulance. That's part of their deficiency.
Okay, so through the Chair to make the motion, just remind me, but these expenses occurred between February and I think it was August of 2020, is that correct?
Can you repeat again?
Sure. The dates,
Yeah,
I believe that's what he
February-
said, February of 2020 to a couple months ago, so we
Yes.
could assume it's August or something of 21.
Thank you. And through the Chair to the maker of the motion, do we know if the ambulance service has or has not received any form of reimbursement from other sources?
No, there was no other reimbursement from other sources.
Okay,
To the
thank you.
chair.
And then finally, through the Chair to the administration, given the fact that we have expenses that occurred over this period of time from February of 2020 to approximately a couple months ago, will that potentially have any impact on the reimbursability of these expenses, assuming the receipts all check out?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I think it's really important. Well, the question was for the time period. The time period is completely consistent with our CARES Act funding. I do need this body to be aware that we've struggled for the past year and a half with getting Gates Volunteer Ambulance Service reimbursement. And we believe we did find a mechanism to do that, Mr. Vice Chairman, and we have done that. Gates Volunteer Ambulance is a 501c3 not-for-profit entity. Back in 2020, this body authorized IMAs with municipalities and fire districts. They are not a fire district. They are a not-for-profit entity. They actually are under contract with the town of Gates. Town of Gates agrees to levy taxes and remit payments to GVA. And the mechanism we suggested Gates and GVA follow last year was that any expenditures COVID-related incurred by GVA should be billed to the town of Gates. That did happen, Mr. Vice Chairman. Subsequent to that, Monroe County entered into an IMA with the town of Gates, providing them roughly $87,000 in change in reimbursement, of which there's $37,983 related to the reimbursement of expenses for GVA. So I think it's important to know that it's important to get our hands on the list of expenditures from GVA, just to make sure that we didn't already reimburse them. But again, I would suggest that the better mechanism through the use of CARES funding is through the town of Gates.
Thank you. So, through the chair's administration, my take on this then is that if we've gone through the regular process to reimburse funds from the American Rescue Care Plan, then the administration would have had a chance to indeed double and triple check to make sure double reimbursements were not going to occur. And now we don't know for a fact that is or is not going to happen before we take legislative action. Whereas in the past, if we went through the administration, we would know that for a fact before we took a vote on it. So in a way, I personally would characterize this as a premature vote then, since we don't know for a fact if all the I's have been dotted and the I's, T's crossed, as the saying goes. And so for that reason, I cannot support this. Well, frankly, when I read the referral, I was not quite sure why this was going to look like as a referral. It's something that should have come from the administration. And I think it's a mistake to do it this way because potential errors do arise. I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Legislator Morelli, you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Legislator Elkoff, I think it's important what you're trying to do here. I know that my community in Irondequoit, we deal with a lot of the same stuff, that our ambulances are being required to go farther than they're initially supposed to go, and going beyond the town borders to try and help out other municipalities. In Irondequoit in particular, we do a lot in the city, and have gone as far as Spencerport, quite frankly, to assist people in need. And I understand your point that oftentimes that money doesn't then go back to these ambulance companies. And in fact, I had a startling figure put in front of me that I believe it's about 1% of all of the bills that the Irondequoit ambulance has gets paid in full. 1%. So I completely understand what it is that the Gates ambulance is going through. However, that being said, I'm not quite sure that this is for Monroe County's responsibility, and is better left to the town of Gates to determine how to handle this. In particular, since according to what the administration said, they are not a taxable district, which means they don't have the ability, much like Irondequoit, to receive tax dollars like for instance, a fire district would have. So, with that being said, I would ask one question to the administration. the wording in the legislation, through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, to the administration, the wording in the legislation says that this is for the purposes of handling COVID and dealing with the pandemic. If any of this $80,000 applies to that, would the county reimburse Gates for that? And then if there is any of that 80,000 that isn't part, simply just a case of what I mentioned and what legislator Elkoff mentioned, that they just didn't get paid, then what happens with the remainder?
Mr. Vice Chairman, that's kind of one reason why I actually prefer to deal with the town of Gates, frankly, to make it their problem and the county's problem. And I say that because GVA bills insurance company, third-party health insurers for their services when they do transport. So it's very difficult to ascertain what expenses or portions thereof were really reimbursable expenses under their insurance billing contracts. And trying to pull that apart is probably a full-time job in of itself. Working with the town of Gates, my opinion was it was an expenditure they made, and it's really their problem if they are found to have reimbursed GVA for expenses already covered by third-party health insurance. And our IMAs with the towns included, I believe, a clawback provision. So if the U.S. Treasury came back us, town of Gates would be liable to the county.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Mr. Vice Chairman, I would move to table this so that the Gates Volunteer Ambulance can have a conversation with the county and perhaps clarify and determine what it is that they can be reimbursed for and what is actually their responsibility. So I would move to table this motion at this time.
We have a motion to table by legislator Morelli, seconded by legislator Barnhart. Will nudge. Just kidding. Roll call vote, please, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Barnhart?
Yes.
Mr. Baroth?
Yes.
Mr. Brew? No. Mrs. DeFlorio?
No.
Mr. Felder? Mr. Heber?
No.
Mr. Mafucci?
Yes.
Mr. Marinetti?
No.
Mr. Morello?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
No.
Chairman Delahaney is excused. President Carbone?
No.
4-7, motion to table fails.
Legislator Brew?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments explaining my vote. My desire is to at least keep this referral alive, and with the hope that any questions or any measures that might be able to take in between now and the full ledge meeting might be put in place to see if this funding can in fact be provided to the Gates Ambulance Service. I think it's something that we all agree would be beneficial to do, but I did hear some good arguments, and we want to make sure that this is clean before we actually do decide on how we're going to vote. So if we could just use the time between now and the next meeting to just do some additional research and provide this body with the information it may need to cast a possibly more accurate vote. Thank you.
Legislator Felder?
And the same question about this referral I had about the state. Is it possible to get an advisory opinion from the Treasury Department on the appropriate use if we had an idea? Because obviously some other counties are doing certain things. They've got the idea from somewhere. Is there a possibility to get an advisory opinion from them on, are we able to, excuse me, Mr. Chairman of the administration, get an advisory opinion on some of these things? We don't line past them.
Mr. Vice Chairman, tonight the answer is we don't know, but we would like to have at least until the full ledge meeting to offer up additional commentary.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. From Mr. Brew's comments, I believe that's what he had in mind by continuing this on and carrying it over the full ledge. I will make a comment because I've done a lot of work on ARPA funding myself. If this does not work out, certainly the towns who have also received ARPA funding have the ability to allocate that to their EMS, EMT type services. So town supervisors, town boards can make a decision to support their EMT organizations, which is dissimilar to the CARES Act funding. Although the town rules and the county rules are slightly different, I'm very confident in saying that. So there are alternative ways to do this that would not use county funds potentially, assuming that the town supervisors, town boards approved it. Mr. Franklin, do you disagree with anything I just said?
No disagreement, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman,
Legislator Morelli, go ahead.
thank you. In that, I would again suggest that perhaps tabling motion may make the most sense, as it would then give us.
The motion's already been moved and seconded. We can't have a second tabling motion on the same item, sir.
That's-
So
Can you suggest?
I understand your thought, but it's already been turned down.
As a way to actually do things correctly, though, Mr. Chairman, that would be appropriate.
Legislator Morelli, we're going to follow Robert's rules. Thank you for the suggestion, but it's inappropriate. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we'll roll call vote, please.
Ms. Barnhart?
No.
Mr. Brown?
No.
Mr. Brew?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio?
Yes.
Mr. Felder?
Yes.
Mr. Heber?
Yes.
Mr.
I'm
Mafucci?
sorry, no. What am I thinking?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Said no.
And I said yes. So I'm just confused. You can tell that right now.
This is on the main motion.
This is on the main motion. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mafucci?
I'm a no.
Okay. I apologize, guys.
Mr.
My hearing aids, and finally, they told me why they weren't working, and I was just changing batteries, so I've been all over.
Mr. Marinetti?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Delahaney is excused. President Carbone?
Yes.
7-4, referral passes.
Next item, please.
Referral 21-0332, authorize a contract with Schuler Haas Electric Corporation for construction services for the Rochester Pure Waters District, Frank E. Van Laer Water Resource Recovery Facility Electrical System Improvements Project.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by President Carbone, seconded by Legislator DeFlorio. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0334, authorize a contract with Blue Heron Construction Company for construction services for the Rochester Pure Waters District's Frank E. Van Laer Water Resource Recovery Facility Aeration System Improvements Project, Phase B.
Move it. Second.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0336, acceptance of a grant from the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee for the Child Passenger Safety Program, Department of Public Safety.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Brew. Any discussion? Legislator Smith.
Through the chair, how is this program advertised to the public?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, the events are posted on the county website. And of course, we rely on our multiple first responder partners to use social media and to assist us with that. And of course, we use the county social media platforms as well.
Thank you. And through the Sheriff's Administration, where do the programs take place?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, they can take place really anywhere that a person wants or an organization wishes to partner with us. We have strong connection, obviously, with all of those first responder agencies. So you see them at local fire departments, local police agencies, and community events throughout the county of Monroe.
Legislator DeFlorio.
Yes, through the chair of the administration, approximately how many seats are purchased through this funding on a yearly basis?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, the allocation allows us to purchase 240 seats. Those are provided to individuals that are eligible based upon income criteria. However, all of the other indications that I mentioned about locations and services is to properly fit a car seat. In many instances, when individuals and families come through a fitting station, we find that the seats are not properly fitted, and it gives our certified technicians the opportunity to correct that issue.
So through the chair of the administration, so presuming that this referral passes, the grant gets accepted, when would the seats be purchased and available for events to start?
I don't have it through you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I don't have an exact date, but certainly they would move as quickly as possible in order to provide this service. GTSC, or the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, has oversight of all of the purchases that we make and making sure that we adhere to their procurement policies.
One more question, sorry. Do you still have seats at hand if a municipality wanted to host an event tomorrow, kind of thing, or next month?
Right. Through you, Mr. Vice Chairman, we do have seats available. Again, those are based upon income eligibility. However, at any time, we would be more than willing to come out and host a fitting station event throughout the county of Monroe.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please, sir.
Referral 21-0337, amend resolution 224 of 2019 to accept additional funding from the New York State Office of Victim Services for the Victim and Witness Assistance Grant Program.
Mr. Chairman. Second. Moved by legislator Bruce, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0338, amend resolution 225 of 2019 to accept additional funding from the New York State Office of Victim Services for the Sheriff's Victim Assistance Program.
Mr. Chair. Second. Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by President Carbone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0339, authorize a contract with Matrix Consulting Group to conduct a staffing analysis study for the Monroe County Sheriff's Office.
Second.
Moved by President Carbone, seconded by legislator DeFlorio. Is there any discussion? Legislator Barra.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Through you to the administration, I realize this study is the first time we're doing a 360-degree one for MCSO. I recognize that. My question is, through the Vice Chair administration, is when was the last time a significant or major non-360-degree analysis study done?
Through the chair, Paul Simonelli for the Sheriff's Office. There's never been any sort of outside evaluation of the Sheriff's Office in its 200-year history. There have been smaller reviews by, for instance, for the jail, on the Commission on Corrections, and obviously through the certification process for the Sheriff's Office. But there's never been a complete review of or staff analysis done of the Sheriff's Office in its history.
And in which case, more kudos to the sheriff for actually doing this. By any measure, along with you. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I do have several questions to ask. Mr. Simonelli, what are the planned uses for the results of the study?
To the Vice Chair, the uses of the study are, number one, to acknowledge what the current circumstances are within the entire agency, and then using that baseline to take recommendations by the consultants and by senior staff at the sheriff's office and implement a short-term and a long-range plan for the sheriff's office, taking it into the next 1 to 2 decades.
Are there any nearby police agencies that have utilized matrix services?
There may have been 1 or 2 other agencies in the last 4 or 5 years in New York State. And I don't have the names of the ones. We spoke with about 4 agencies that have used them in the last 3 to 5 year time frame.
Thank you. And by the way, I fully agree with Legislator Barrow's comment that this is a great idea. I just want to dig into a few of the details. I actually had a long discussion with Mr. Simonelli by way of full disclosure at his request. And there's some things I'd just like to get public because I think it's really important for people to understand how important this is. I'll try to be brief. So I've taken all my yellow comments, if you will, Paul, and I've turned them into orange comments, so the ones I'm going to ask tonight. In the revised proposal introduction to the studies section, it indicates the number of organizations are being worked with. The listed organizations are fundamentally all representative of the city of Rochester. I'm just going to suggest that you make sure that you include outside agencies. And through our discussion, we were intending to do so, but I just want to make that a clear request of the legislature that the sheriff's office do that. Another question, there's a lot of reference to best practices. Could you please comment on how policing best practices are in fact determined?
So, Mr. Vice Chair, as we discussed earlier this week or late last week, there's several organizations, entities in the country that their sole purpose is to study police practices and try to identify best practices for similarly situated agencies. We rely on the senior staff as well as Matrix, who immerses themselves in this work. This is what they do to stay current on what those best practices are and ones that could be applied to the sheriff's office, the different portions of the sheriff's office. So there is not one single place to go for best practices, but once again, it's a whole body of knowledge and that's one of the reasons to have an outside consultant that is working throughout the country in case there's something that might not have hit publications or otherwise that they have experience with.
I would also note that the last several pages of what you provided to the legislative body are all different sorts and kinds and types and cuts on data. Could you comment on the sheriff's office's efforts to provide that data to me?
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, that's actually going to be one of the extreme learning points of this. Much of the data that we found and when we arrived at the sheriff's office was being maintained in disparate systems. Everything from literally from manual sheets of paper to Excel spreadsheets to access databases that employees that passed away 15 or 20 years ago had put together at some point. And one of the important findings we're hoping, or a group of findings, are going to be on, I think we've made some good advances on information systems and all our IT systems, but we still have a long way to go. And one of the challenges of this study is that much of the work in collecting this data is going to be literally knuckling manual reports. So our goal is that we'll have great recommendations how this can all be tied together for the future. Once again, the goal of the sheriff is complete transparency for the sheriff's office, and us being able to develop or to have access to those reports so that they can be put in one place so the public has access to them. It's key for us to figure out the best way to do that and how to integrate it all. So we're hoping that that's going to be one of the, or we're looking for that to be one of the, or some of the recommendations of Matrix on how we can do this going forward.
Thank you, and it looks like the table in here shows about a 4-month project timeline. Over that 4 months, there are 6 or 7 deliverables, or I'll call them interim deliverables, prior to the final report to the sheriff's office. I just want to make a formal request that a copy of those be provided in a very timely fashion to the legislature as we go through, rather than getting a big massive dump at the very end of each of those 6 or 7 deliverables.
I can commit that we have no problem sharing findings, but many of those deliverables are pieces of the formula. So rather than inundating the legislature, what I will share any findings that are interim findings that they make, will be more than glad to share with the legislature possibly through the committees that are handling, that we've been reviewed, that have reviewed this.
Thank you. And on page 6 of the materials you gave to the legislature, some samples of cost estimates. And my question to you on Friday was, would these cost estimates include the cost to recruit and train additional staff? So are they all inclusive, or are they just for the activities that they'll be providing?
No, we're hoping that in the end, and of course we'll have to internally validate numbers, but given the experience of the people involved within our agency, and I know some of your experience, many times all the costs aren't considered in deciding to take an action, and that's, I would say, one of my pet peeves in working through this project with the project manager. Any proposals will include not only training and startup, but also sustainment, because there's no reason to implement something if we can't continue it. I heard a question earlier this evening about future financing of a position. So that's got to be part of the formula.
Thank you. And at a NISAC meeting 2 weeks ago, there was a discussion about sheriffs and recruiting and the difficulties being caused by the general public environment at this point in time, but as well by the civil service requirements. Can you comment on whether or not civil service requirements will be included in this report, or how else they might be being handled?
So 2 answers. Yes, they will affect this report because they have a dramatic effect on recruiting and what we're able to accomplish in trying to build an agency that reflects the community. I will tell you, almost since the beginning of our tenure at the sheriff's office, the sheriff has been leading a group from the Sheriff's Association and trying to affect change in different areas of civil service. There's the restrictions really do impede much of what we're trying to accomplish within the sheriff's office and sheriff's agencies throughout the state, law enforcement around the state, because of the banding systems, the scoring systems. So we're trying to get creative on things that can be done without legislation, but also we're looking at the long range. And the sheriff has been, like I said, heading a group of sheriffs from around the state and meeting with civil service to try to affect some future, potentially some legislation to adjust it for law enforcement.
Thank you. I have a few more. I'm going to continue as quickly as I can, but will the engagement cover newer technologies, recommendations for how to do them? And I'll give you an example of body worn camera.
Anything that, obviously the starting point is what we have right now, which include body worn cameras, but also there's different technology, including that we're in the process of implementing. So those will be part of everything that they take a look at, and obviously they will make recommendations on how to move forward with some of these programs. We have a new records management system that's coming online right now, the new communication systems, so some new software systems within the agency for managing data. So all those things will be acknowledged, and if there's adjustments or improvements that need to be made, they'll do that. They'll recommend those.
Will there be any analysis of the current 3 zones used as a coverage strategy by the sheriff's office?
That obviously is a part of it, looking at manpower and how it's used throughout, for the road patrol throughout the county, and whether or not the model that we have in place now, which has been a long-term model for the sheriff's office, whether that is the best way to go forward. So, like I said, we're not going in with any preconceived ideas on what we want this to be. We really did make it clear to this organization, to Matrix, that in doing this, we want their best estimate and best results that they can give us without us giving them any guidance on what we'd like to see. We all have an idea of what we think we know is right, but we need to be able to validate that through the work they're doing.
And what is the timeline for start and estimated completion of this analysis?
So you see the proposed timeline in the proposal. Our goal would be to have this completely, to have the final report published and available before March 1st of next year.
Thank you. That concludes my questions. Anybody else have any further questions? Sorry about the interrogation, but thank you very much, Mr. Simonelli, and thank you for the time you spent with me on Friday.
You're welcome.
Seeing no additional questions, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 21-0340, acceptance of a grant from the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee for the Police Traffic Services Program.
Move it. Second.
Moved by legislator DeFlorio, seconded by legislator Smith. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 21-0341, acceptance of a grant from the New York State Canal Corporation for the New York State Canal Corporation Marine Patrol Matching Grant Program.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by legislator Smith, seconded by legislator Drew. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0342, authorize a contract with the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency for economic development activities, staff services, and office expenses.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by President Carbone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral number 21-0343, authorize a contract with Greater Rochester Enterprise for general operating expenses.
Second.
Moved by President Carbone, seconded by legislator DeFlorio. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0344, acceptance of a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services to update the guest experience at the Seneca Park Zoo Animal Hospital.
Move it. Second.
Moved by legislator DeFlorio, seconded by legislator Smith. Discussion, legislator Brewer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Through you to the administration, I recognize the grant runs for a full year, but when do we anticipate the updates actually begin? Or, to put it another way, when would visitors benefit from these updates?
Through the chair, we have actually already started looking at how we can get these things accomplished. We're anticipating that this will be completed by March of next year.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 21-0345, acceptance of a grant from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation for the Snowmobile Trail Development and Maintenance Program and authorize contracts with the Hilton Snow Flyers, Webster Ridge Runner Snowmobile Club, Salmon Creek Snowmobile Club, and Hill and Gully Riders for the development and maintenance of trails.
Move it.
Second. Moved by legislator Smith, second by legislator Brew. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 21-0346, authorize a traffic signal agreement with Cary Ventures Portland to perform traffic signal operation and maintenance services for traffic signal number 694 located at the intersection of Portland Avenue and Chick-fil-A in the town of Verona.
Move it, Mr. Chairman. Moved by legislator Brew, seconded by legislators Morelli and Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 21-0347, acceptance of federal and state aid for the operation and maintenance of the Rochester Monroe County Traffic Control Center.
Move it, Mr. Chairman. Second. Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by President Carbone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral number 21-0348, acceptance of a grant from the New York State Department of Health and amended resolution 14 of 2021 to increase the contract with Affinity Rehabilitation for the early intervention program.
Second.
Moved by President Carbone, seconded by legislator DeFlorio. Legislator Groff, discussion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Through the administration, this referral calls for a grant increase of just under $60,000, and an increase in amount of approximately $54,250 more. That leaves a difference of about $5,700. Am I correct to think that $5,700 will go to the county's general fund?
Okay, I'm sorry, can you please repeat the question?
And the mask comes off. So, the grant increase is $59,991. The increase in the contract amount is $54,249. That's a difference of $5,742. And I just want to know where that $5,742 was going to go to which budget line, to the Vice Chair.
Or would go through the Department of Health.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, that's paid for essentially county work in kind, correct? Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 21-0349, authorize a contract with Health System Service to provide Medicare B products and supplies for residents of Monroe County, or Monroe Community Hospital.
Move it. Second.
Moved by legislator DeFlorio, seconded by legislator Smith. Any discussion? Legislator Boroff.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I will admit to being obtuse on this one. Due to Vice City Administration, I recognize our costs will not exceed $30,000, but I'm unclear as to how it's possible that the company, Health System Services, will actually make a profit, because apparently the total consideration of the contract can't exceed $20,000. And so if someone could explain to me how this works, I'd appreciate that. Through the Vice Chair.
Through the chair, the contractor bills Medicare Part B for the supplies that they actually provide, so they are reimbursed for those costs through Medicare.
Okay, and then through the Vice Chair Administration, and then in addition to that, they get funding from us, correct?
Through the chair, they only receive funding from us if for any reason Medicare denies the claim. For example, if a dressing is used on a wound that is not covered, that cost will come back and be absorbed by the facility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0350, authorize a contract with Jensen Hughes to provide an emergency preparedness program for Monroe Community Hospital.
Move it, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved by legislator Smith, seconded by legislator Brew. Is there any discussion? Legislator Smith.
Through the chair to the administration, has this service been provided before? And if so, who provided that service?
Through the chair, I do not know if the service was provided to establish our initial emergency preparedness plan. That was before my time.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0352, authorize the acquisition of interest in real property for permanent easements for the South Clinton Avenue traffic signal at 1905 and 1925 South Clinton Avenue in the town of Brighton.
Move it, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Moved by legislator Brew, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? I do have a quick question. Why is there zero consideration on map 29 Mercer? I thought that was a legal requirement to be able to transfer already.
Through the chair, easements can be donated if the owner of the property determines it's in their best interest. And these are providing private traffic signals for the area near Loman's Plaza and the new development across the street.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 21-0353, erroneous assessment refund.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by President Carbone. Legislator Baroff, discussion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Through you to the administration, what is the current balance of the erroneous assessment account?
I don't have that information with me. We'll respond before a full ledge.
That's great, thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 21-0354, acceptance of a grant from the Federal Aviation Administration Airport Rescue Grant Program related to the operation and maintenance of the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by President Carbone, seconded by legislator DeFlorio. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item, please. Item carries.
Referral 21-0355, authorize intermunicipal agreements with municipalities for Rochester, Monroe County Youth Bureau programs in 2021.
Move it. Second.
Moved by legislator DeFlorio, seconded by legislator Smith. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 21-0356, authorize contracts with not-for-profit agencies for Rochester, Monroe County Youth Bureau programs in 2021.
Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved by legislator Smith, seconded by legislator Brew. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Through you to the administration, what agencies are county considering for the final allocation of $25,000? It's number 16 on the private agency contract list.
Through you, from the administration, we have to wait to hear back from the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. These contracts are initiated through an RFQ process. So once we get the final contract, we can.
Okay, thank you. And then through the Vice Chair of the administration, and when that happens, will we get a completed purchase of services information form for that as well?
We can provide that information once we receive it from New York State.
Thank you. And finally, through the chair's administration, do we have any timeline when this might occur, or is this stuff, who knows when?
Through you, Mr. President, I believe that we will have to follow up with New York State. A lot of the funding that we're receiving, unfortunately, the county is not involved in the RFQ and the RFP process. We kind of wait for the state to let us know the contract that they're designated to us, and then we can provide that information to you. We also are asking New York State around a timeline for the distribution, so we can look at that contract.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 21-0357, authorization to enter into a settlement and release of claims against or agreement with Excelis Health Plan, DBA Excelis Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Move it. Second.
Moved by legislator Brew, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Legislator Barat.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just want to state that I recall actually authorizing this contract in the first place to do the audit and thinking of the wonderful idea at the time. My question to the Vice Chair of the administration is, are there any thoughts to doing additional audits at different timeframes or not?
Through the chair, this audit resolved the particular issue that we were looking at. So at this point, no, we don't see a need to do further audits.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral number 21-0358, authorize an increase to the contract with the Greater Rochester Visitors Association to provide management, planning, and production of the Monroe County Bicentennial Celebration, and authorize an interdepartmental appropriation transfer.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by President Carbone. I've been told by President Carbone he needed to make a statement on this one, so I will turn the floor over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Before we begin discussion on this item, I'd like to inform the committee of the redesignation of the lead committee for this item for recreation and education to Ways and Means. This redesignation is due to the determination that this item is more appropriately in the purview of Ways and Means Committee, as it largely pertains to financial and budgetary matters. The clerk of the legislature has been notified of this update and will reflect this change accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Did everybody understand that? Okay, legislator, actually, before you comment, legislator Broth, I'll come back to you. I was here last night during the rec committee meeting, and I did hear the questions that were asked and the comments that were made to the administration. My question would be, it seems that the funding source for this is the thing that's driving the disagreement. I don't think either caucus is opposed to the concept. I think they are opposed to the concept of the health department being the funding source for this particular referral. Is it possible you could choose a different funding source and provide an amendment prior to full legislature to change the funding source? Because I think that would eliminate all the concerns.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I would like to note that the appropriation source is within the Department of Human Services Financial Assistance Administration, not the Department of Health.
I'm sorry, I misspoke here, sorry.
Mr. Vice Chairman, with all due respect, I have to say to this body that I did not choose this particular administrative account randomly. I think everyone here knows I spent the better part of 8 years of my life at Department of Human Services as its temporary assistance director and then deputy commissioner, so it has a near and dear place in my heart. I, in my chief financial officer capacity and budget director capacity, reviewed administrative accounts, administrative cost centers across a number of departments in the county. I felt that an administrative account was more appropriate to identify a transfer. I was a little hesitant and wary to identify a program account, that may provide direct services to our community's residents. This particular administrative account, Mr. Vice Chairman, does have unencumbered and available appropriations that will not be used by the end of the calendar year. It is my professional recommendation that this is a fine source to transfer the appropriations from. If this body is going to ask me to find another funding source to transfer appropriations from, I would have to respectfully request that maybe you reconsider that ask, as this is my honest professional opinion as the budget director.
Understood, Mr. Franklin. But my question, I guess, would be, it's a relatively, $51,000 in a $1 billion budget is a pretty small amount. And having spoken to the people that voted against this in the committee that met last evening, they're concerned simply that the appearances that was coming out of human services, as opposed to something like, say, the communications account or an administrative account. So there isn't $51,000 in any of those accounts that we supposed to.
Certainly, Mr. Vice Chairman, I do respect that perspective. You did mention the $1.2 billion budget. I would like to highlight to this body that the Department of Human Services is a $554 million budget, and a $51,000 appropriation transfer out of a $554 million budget is pretty much a drop in the bucket. The Communications Department is a $700,000 budget. Honestly, Mr. Vice Chairman, the county charter calls for one chief financial officer in Monroe County, and I'm it for the time being.
And I'm damn glad you are. So there's nothing in the administrative account. I'm not sure you answered the question if there's no money in the administrative account or communications account.
Point of order, Mr. Vice Chairman has to.
I don't believe it was answered, Mr. Morelli, but point of order seconded, and certainly take precedent.
I can answer that, Mr. Vice Chairman. The entire Communications Department is an administrative account. There is no administrative cost center. I have a lot of opinions regarding staff departments, especially the Communications Department, that has incurred a number of appropriate expenses for county government in my tenure, that for a variety of reasons, administrations have been hesitant to appropriate budget for the communications because it does appear as bloat, but the expenses are there nonetheless, and I have to find them. And no, Mr. Vice Chairman, there is not $51,000 available in unencumbered appropriations in the Communications Department.
And again, this is simply a recommendation based on my discussion. Again, I think everybody supports the concept, we just don't necessarily support the look of using a human services account for bicentennial celebration. I think the connection here is weak. But I'm gonna turn the floor to Legislator Baroff and make questions. Look, make it Legislator Mafucci. No. Legislator Fellow. Several hands were up.
I have a couple questions for the administration. Normally,
a little louder, please, Mr. Fellow.
I think, so, normally, bicentennial celebrations are planned in advance. What kind of found on February 23rd and 21? Why are we talking about funding the celebration bicentennial on September 28th? It's like 7 months later. Just curious.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chairman, there have been several lower profile activities that have happened in honor of our bicentennial. This is actually the bicentennial year. And what we're looking at and what this referral contemplates would be activities that would take place largely next year, because there would be a planning process involved in that, and it would take time for these events to be conceived, implemented, and scheduled. So we are looking at doing things next year, which would actually be the bicentennial plus 1 year, and that was in recognition of the pandemic and the limitations that we would have on activities that would take place this year.
Any other questions, Phil?
I'm just saying, I know because I remember lessons about it. I haven't seen any kind of hype all year long, regardless of the pandemic, about this being the bicentennial year for Monroe County. I think that was opportunity there. I'm not gonna vote against this, but I'm just saying, this seems to be odd that, that we really had any kind of publicity around our family all year long.
That was just a comment. That's a question. Legislator Florio.
Yes, through the chair of the administration, I just want to seek clarity on the funding source. I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. When the funding is coming out of Health and Human Services, but out of their administrative account, is that correct?
Mr. Vice Chairman, yes, the Financial Assistance Administrative Fund Center is just one administrative fund center within the overall department.
Thank you. And then a follow-up question to that. What types of expenses are generally charged to this cost center?
Mr. Vice Chairman, there's a lot. I'm going to give you some of the bigger ones. This particular cost center would be we would budget the management of employment service contracts for the temporary assistance division. New York State has waived work requirements due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and those administrative employment contracts would not be fully utilized. Another big expense is for New York State chargebacks. New York State charges the social services district for expenses borne by New York State but managed here, such as our client notice service. Those are the mailings telling the applicant, recipient that their benefits are extended, increased, or decreased. Charges for fair hearings. When we do take adverse action, a client can appeal to an administrative law judge, and New York State charges us for those administrative law hearings. Because the caseloads are so incredibly low during the COVID-19 pandemic, there are far, far fewer fair hearings. Therefore, the state chargeback is much lower. There are also a variety of other budget expenses like commercial services, which would include like our armored car pickup, the NICID contract we have for the welfare to work case management system data entry. That's a contract for staff to data enter into the welfare management system notes regarding client employment and work engagement. Obviously, because the caseloads are so low, those contracts have not been fully utilized. So because of those declines in charges, these appropriations will go unutilized by the end of the year.
And then just one last question. So what happens with that unencumbered money, just so, again, tie the bow?
Mr. Vice Chairman, this question comes up a lot. Unused appropriations expire at the end of the calendar year.
And then they would go into the general fund?
So, Mr. Vice Chairman, appropriations are not money. Appropriations are authority to spend. That authority to spend expires at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Legislator Burrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a procedural question. I think I'm firmly support of the president's changing the lead committee to being Ways and Means. I understand why, and I'm fine with that. My concern is that, our documentation that's online in the record currently has, on paper online, as recommended as the lead committee. My question to you, to the clerk, is do you have like a written documentation of this change that if someone goes looking for this as an academic years from now, they'll find that in fact, yes, the lead committee designation was changed, so it's not just a verbal record here.
Yeah, I'll rescan the referral. I can also repost it online.
I appreciate that because you never know.
No problem.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Legislator Brew.
Yeah, I'd like to explain my vote supporting this. I do think we did raise some valid questions, but I do trust the CFO's feedback explaining the budgeting source process, where it was coming from, and why it was fully capable of being able to fund it based on experience with the Human Services Department itself. So I'm satisfied with the administration's response, and I will be voting in the affirmative to support this. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item carries. Next.
Referral 21-0362, authorized license and operating agreements with the Seneca Park Zoo Society and SSA Group for the Seneca Park Zoo.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by President Carbone, seconded by Legislator Florio. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 21-0363, authorization for intermunicipal agreements and contracts with schools in Monroe County for COVID-19 testing.
Move it. Second.
Moved by Legislator Florio, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion? Legislator Barnhart.
Through the chair to the administration, is this contract involving rapid tests or PCR tests?
Mr. Vice Chairman, that is a aspect of the school plan to be worked out with our county Department of Public Health. Either would be acceptable.
I'd like to encourage the use of test to stay. Earlier, I think it was the last committee meeting, legislators DeFlorio and Hebert were touching on the quarantine burden faced by a number of school districts. Other states and cities around the country are using test to stay, and that's where you use rapid tests to find the infectious students and send them home. And this allows the non-infectious students to be able to stay, whereas PCR tests can find people who've already recovered and are no longer infectious, and that creates quite a disruption. I'm not hearing a lot of talk about that in New York State or even Monroe County. The supply of rapid tests is very limited. I would just like to encourage Monroe County's health department, New York State, if we're going to spend this kind of money, and I know rapid tests are in short supply, let's use rapid tests in a way that we are conserving them for their best possible use that will keep students in school and keep everyone healthy by finding the people who are infectious. It's working in other places, and it will limit disruptive quarantine. So I just wanted to provide that input. I'm hoping Dr. Mendoza might be able to provide some more input perhaps at the full legislature meeting, but this is a lot of money, and it's a great opportunity to do something like Test to Stay, which is just now gaining steam as the school year begins. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. That being the last item, is there any other business to come before this committee? Hearing none, I declare this committee meeting closed. The next meeting of the Ways and Means Committee will be held October 26th, 2021. Everybody, thank you for your time. Have a good evening.